I'm Catherine, 34 years old, and a single mom to my beautiful 6-year-old daughter Zoe. Her long blonde hair was always her pride and joy, something we bonded over during our nightly brushing ritual. My sister Cassandra has always been the prankster in our family, crossing boundaries that should never be crossed. But when she cut off my daughter's hair during my father's birthday party, I never expected my parents to laugh. My mother actually said, "She's not a beauty queen anyway," while my father added, "Now she finally looks like your kid." Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, what I did after they mocked my crying daughter will make your jaw drop. Life as a single mom hasn't been easy since my divorce from Walter 3 years ago. We had been married for 7 years when he decided that family life wasn't what he wanted after all. He moved across the country to California for a job opportunity, leaving me to raise Zoe essentially on my own. He sends child support payments, usually late, and calls Zoe once a month if we're lucky. The financial struggle has been real, especially with daycare costs and trying to maintain our modest 2-bedroom apartment on my nursing salary alone. Despite the challenges, Zoe has always been a bright light in my life. She's spirited, creative, and has her father's blue eyes, but my blonde hair. That hair became something special between us after Walter left. Every night, we would sit on her bed, and I would brush it 100 strokes while she told me about her day at kindergarten. It was our ritual, our bonding time. Her hair grew past her waist, silky and beautiful. She was so proud of it, often comparing herself to Rapunzel from her favorite story. My sister Cassandra is 3 years younger than me, and growing up, she always seemed to be in competition with me. Our parents, Evelyn and Harold, had a tendency to excuse her behavior with phrases like, "She's just expressing herself," or "She's the creative one." When we were children, Cassandra would often break my toys or borrow my clothes without asking, returning them damaged. If I complained, my parents would tell me to be more generous, to be the bigger person because I was older. This pattern continued into adulthood. Cassandra would make cutting remarks about my appearance or life choices, then claim she was just joking when I got upset. She married Gregory, a successful accountant, and they have twin boys who are 8. She doesn't work, dedicating her time to maintaining her social media presence where she portrays herself as the perfect mother and homemaker. She's always posting elaborate crafts with her sons or perfectly staged family photos. My parents continued to enable her behavior. My mother, Evelyn, now 62, still calls Cassandra her free spirit while expecting me to be the responsible one. My father, Harold, 65, an attorney nearing retirement, has always been wrapped around Cassandra's finger. Growing up, I was expected to get perfect grades and help around the house, while Cassandra was praised for the minimum effort. Despite our complicated relationship, I still tried to maintain family connections for Zoe's sake. I wanted her to have grandparents and an aunt in her life, even if they weren't always fair or kind to me. I thought family was important, that blood ties meant something. I see now how naive that was. The incident happened during my father's 65th birthday party at my parents' suburban home. It was a Saturday afternoon, and about 20 family members and some of my father's colleagues were there. Zoe was excited to see her cousins, and I had spent extra time that morning brushing her hair and putting it in a beautiful braid with a blue ribbon that matched her dress. When we arrived, Cassandra immediately commented on Zoe's hair. "Wow, someone's trying hard to be the center of attention," she said with that fake laugh she always uses. I ignored her, as I usually did when she made these kinds of remarks. I noticed her watching Zoe throughout the afternoon with an expression I couldn't quite place. In hindsight, I should have been more vigilant. As the party progressed, I was helping my mother in the kitchen while Zoe played upstairs with her cousins. Cassandra had disappeared about 20 minutes earlier, but I didn't think anything of it. My mother was criticizing my potato salad contribution to the meal, suggesting I should have added more mayonnaise like Cassandra does, when we heard the scream from upstairs. I felt an immediate knot in my stomach, that maternal instinct that tells you something is wrong with your child. I dropped the serving spoon and ran toward the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The scream came again as I raced up the stairs, my feet barely touching the steps. "Mommy!" Zoe's voice was filled with terror and confusion. I followed the sound to the upstairs bathroom, pushing past Cassandra's twins who were standing in the hallway looking uncomfortable. When I burst through the door, the scene before me froze my blood. Zoe was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, her hands covering her head, sobbing uncontrollably. Around her feet lay long strands of blonde hair, her beautiful hair scattered across the white tile floor like fallen ribbon. Cassandra stood behind her, scissors in hand, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "What did you do?" I gasped, rushing to Zoe and pulling her into my arms. Her hair had been chopped unevenly, chunks missing, some areas cut to within an inch of her scalp. The beautiful braid we had done that morning lay on the counter like a severed limb. "Relax, it's just a prank," Cassandra said, setting the scissors down casually. "Hair grows back. We were playing hairdresser, right, Zoe?" She looked at my daughter as if expecting agreement, but Zoe only buried her face in my shirt, her small body shaking with sobs. "A prank? You call this a prank?" My voice was rising, shock giving way to anger. "Look what you've done to her. How could you?" Cassandra rolled her eyes. That familiar dismissive gesture I'd seen thousands of times. "God, you're so dramatic, Catherine. It's just hair. She needed a trim anyway. Those split ends were awful." I turned Zoe away from the mirror, trying to shield her from the sight of her ruined hair. "You had no right," I said, my voice shaking. "No right at all to touch my daughter without my permission." "It was just a bit of fun," Cassandra insisted, crossing her arms defensively. The boys thought it was funny. I looked at my nephews, who were now peering through the doorway. They didn't look amused. They looked uncomfortable and a little scared. This wasn't their fault. This was Cassandra's doing. "Zoe, honey," I said, kneeling down to my daughter's level. "I'm so sorry this happened. We'll fix it, okay? We'll make it better." But Zoe wouldn't stop crying, her small hands still covering her head, refusing to look at herself again. Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. I stood up, facing my sister. "This is beyond anything you've ever done. Cassandra, this is cruel. She's 6 years old. You need to lighten up," Cassandra said, turning to leave the bathroom. "Come on, boys. Aunt Catherine is being a killjoy again." I was trembling with rage as I lifted Zoe into my arms and carried her downstairs. I needed my parents to see what Cassandra had done. Surely this one time, they would take my side. This wasn't about me. This was about my innocent daughter. The party guests fell silent as I entered the living room with my sobbing child. My father was in the middle of telling a story, drink in hand, but stopped mid-sentence when he saw us. My mother hurried over, her face showing concern until she saw Zoe's hair. Then, to my absolute horror, she began to laugh. "Oh my goodness," she said, covering her mouth but not hiding her amusement. "What happened here?" "Cassandra cut her hair," I said through gritted teeth. "She called it a prank." My father joined my mother, looking at Zoe's ruined hair with a chuckle. Well, Cassandra's been playing barber, has she?" "This isn't funny," I insisted, feeling Zoe's tears soaking through my shirt. "Look how upset she is." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "She'll get over it. It's not like she's a beauty queen anyway." I felt as if I'd been slapped. Did my mother really just say that about her own granddaughter? Before I could respond, my father added his own cruel comment. "Now she finally looks like your kid," he said with a smirk, referencing the old family joke that Zoe looked nothing like me, taking after Walter instead. The room fell uncomfortably silent. A few guests looked away, embarrassed. Gregory, Cassandra's husband, at least had the decency to look ashamed, though he said nothing in our defense. Cassandra stood in the doorway, a triumphant smile on her face. She had done what she always did. Hurt me and got away with it, praised even. In that moment, something broke inside me. Not just my heart for my daughter, but whatever connection I still felt obligated to maintain with my family. They weren't just enabling Cassandra's behavior anymore, they were participating in the cruelty. I looked around the room at the family members who had watched me grow up, who now watched in silence as my child was humiliated. None of them spoke up. None of them showed any compassion for a sobbing 6-year-old whose sense of self had just been violently disrupted. "We're leaving," I announced, turning toward the door with Zoe still in my arms. No one tried to stop us. No one apologized. As I walked out, I heard the conversation resume behind me, as if nothing significant had happened. The drive home was punctuated by Zoe's heartbreaking sobs from the back seat. Every time she started to calm down, she would touch her head and start crying again. I tried to reassure her, promising we would fix it somehow, but I was fighting back tears myself. The betrayal cut deep. Not just for me, but for my innocent child who had done nothing to deserve such cruelty. Once home, I sat Zoe in front of our bathroom mirror to assess the damage. It was even worse than I had initially thought. Cassandra had cut it so unevenly that there was no way to salvage the length. The only option would be to cut it very short to even it out. "Honey," I said gently, "I think we need to go to a salon tomorrow to fix this. They'll need to cut it short to make it even, but it will grow back. I promise. I don't want short hair," Zoe wailed, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I want my hair back. Why did Aunt Cassandra do this to me?" I had no answer that would make sense to a 6-year-old. How do you explain adult cruelty to a child? How do you tell your daughter that her aunt is jealous and vindictive and her grandparents are callous enablers? "Some people do mean things because they're unhappy inside," I said finally, holding her close. "It's not your fault." Not at all. That night, Zoe refused to eat dinner. She wouldn't look in any mirrors and cried herself to sleep in my arms. I lay beside her long after she fell asleep, stroking what remained of her hair, my mind replaying the events of the day. The image of my parents laughing, my mother's comment about Zoe not being a beauty queen, my father's cruel joke about her finally looking like my child. The memory made me physically ill. I checked my phone several times, part of me hoping that one of them would call to apologize, to check on Zoe, to show some basic human decency. Nothing. Not a text, not a call. It was as if we had never left, as if nothing significant had happened. Around midnight, I called my best friend Alicia, needing to talk to someone who would understand. Alicia had known my family for years and was well aware of the dynamics at play. "They did what?" she exclaimed when I told her what happened. "Catherine, that's abuse. What Cassandra did was assault, and your parents' reaction is emotional abuse. You need to cut these people out of your life." "I know," I said, my voice breaking. "I think I finally see them for who they really are. I just kept hoping they would change, that they would be the family Zoe deserves." "They've shown you who they are," Alicia said firmly. "Now you need to believe them. And you need to show Zoe that it's not okay for people to treat her this way, even family." She was right. All my life, I had made excuses for their behavior. I had swallowed my hurt, tried to be the bigger person, maintained the relationship for Zoe's sake. But what message was I sending my daughter? That it was okay for people to humiliate her? That family could hurt you and you should just take it? I barely slept that night. When I did drift off, I had nightmares about Zoe being laughed at by classmates, by teachers, by strangers on the street. I woke up with a renewed sense of anger and determination. The next day was Sunday, and first thing in the morning, I called every salon in town until I found one that could take an emergency appointment. The stylist, a kind woman named Diana, was horrified when I explained what had happened. She did her best with Zoe's hair, creating a pixie cut that at least looked intentional rather than the result of a vicious prank. Zoe cried again when she saw the final result. But Diana was gentle with her. "You look like a fairy princess," she told my daughter. "And remember, princesses can have short hair too. Look at Princess Diana or Audrey Hepburn." Zoe didn't know who those women were, but the kindness in Diana's voice seemed to calm her a little. Still, on the way home, she asked me a question that broke my heart all over again. "Mommy, do I have to go to school tomorrow? The kids will laugh at me." I considered keeping her home, but I knew that would only delay the inevitable. "No one is going to laugh at you, sweetheart," I assured her, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. "Your hair looks cute now. And if anyone says anything mean, you tell your teacher right away. That night, Zoe had nightmares. She woke up screaming, having dreamed that Cassandra was cutting off not just her hair, but her ears too. I held her until she fell back asleep, my anger growing with each passing hour. Monday morning arrived, and I had to return to work at Memorial Hospital, where I'm a nurse in the pediatric ward. I called the school to explain the situation, asking Zoe's teacher to be especially vigilant for any teasing. Then I dropped Zoe off, my heart breaking at the sight of her clutching her backpack, her small shoulders hunched as if trying to make herself invisible. At work, I couldn't focus. My colleague Jenna noticed my distraction during our shift and pulled me aside during our break. "What's going on with you today?" she asked. "You almost gave room for the wrong medication." I broke down and told her everything. Jenna listened, her expression growing increasingly outraged. "And you're just going to let them get away with this?" she asked when I finished. "What choice do I have? They're her family." Jenna shook her head firmly. "No, Catherine. Family doesn't do that to each other. Family protects each other. These people hurt your child and laughed about it. They need to understand that actions have consequences." Her words stayed with me throughout the day. When I picked Zoe up from school, I was relieved to hear that while a few kids had asked about her hair, no one had been overtly mean. Still, she was subdued, not her usual chatty self. At home, she avoided the bathroom and asked me to take down the decorative mirror in the hallway. My heart ached watching her try to adjust to this unwanted change, this violation of her body and sense of self. That night, after Zoe was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and made a decision. I had spent my whole life letting my family walk all over me, accepting their cruelty as normal. I had hoped that by maintaining the relationship, I could somehow protect Zoe from the worst of it. But I had failed. And now my daughter was suffering. It was time to show them that actions have consequences. It was time for them to feel a fraction of the pain and humiliation they had inflicted on my innocent child. It was time for revenge. Over the next few days, I began to formulate a plan. My initial impulse was to simply cut Cassandra's hair while she slept, to give her a taste of her own medicine. But that seemed too direct, too easily traced back to me. Besides, it wouldn't affect my parents, who had been equally cruel with their comments and laughter. No, I needed something more subtle. Something that would impact all of them where it hurt most, their precious appearances and reputations. That's what they truly cared about, after all. Cassandra with her perfect social media presence, my mother with her country club friends, my father with his law firm colleagues. Image was everything to them. I began by gathering information. A quick check of Cassandra's social media revealed that she had an important work presentation coming up. Despite her stay-at-home mom status, she occasionally did freelance interior design work. And according to her latest post, she was pitching to a potentially major client the following week. She had been preparing for weeks, calling it her big break. As for my parents, my father's retirement party was scheduled for the end of the month. He had invited all his law partners, several judges, and other influential people in the legal community. My mother had been planning it for months, determined to make it the social event of the season. Perfect timing. I requested a day off from work, telling my supervisor I needed to take Zoe to a follow-up hair appointment. In reality, I arranged for Zoe to spend the day with Alicia's daughter, her best friend from school. I didn't tell Alicia exactly what I was planning. I just said I needed to take care of some family business, and she was happy to help. My first stop that day was a beauty supply store where I purchased temporary blue hair dye, the kind that would wash out after several shampoos. Not immediately, but not permanent either. I also bought some industrial-strength itching powder, the type used in practical joke shops. Next, I visited a hardware store and purchased some super glue and a few other items I might need. My final stop was an electronics store where I bought a prepaid phone that couldn't be traced back to me. Back at home, I created a new social media account under a fake name, complete with a stock photo profile picture. I spent some time researching Cassandra's professional contacts and the law firm where my father worked, gathering email addresses and phone numbers that might be useful. As I made these preparations, I occasionally felt a twinge of doubt. Was I going too far? Was I stooping to their level? But then I would look at Zoe, see her trying to hide her hair under hats and hoodies, notice how she had stopped singing to herself while playing, how her usual confidence had been replaced by insecurity and shame. I would remember my mother's words, "She's not a beauty queen anyway." I would hear my father's cruel joke, "Now she finally looks like your kid." And my resolve would strengthen. They had hurt my child, laughed at her pain, and shown no remorse. They deserved to experience some consequences for once in their privileged, entitled lives. The next morning, I dropped Zoe off at school. She was still struggling with her new haircut. But her teacher had been wonderfully supportive, even bringing in some cute hair clips to help Zoe feel better about her appearance. Seeing my daughter trying so hard to be brave just reinforced my determination. I knew that Cassandra and Gregory both worked from home on Tuesdays. But I also knew that Gregory had a standing golf game every Tuesday morning, and Cassandra always went to her yoga class from 9 to 10:30. Their housekeeper had the day off. The twins would be at school. The house would be empty. I had a key to their house from the time I'd watched the twins during their anniversary trip last year. They had never asked for it back. Now, that oversight would cost them. At precisely 9:15, I parked a block away from their suburban McMansion and walked briskly to the back door. The neighborhood was quiet. Most residents at work or school. I let myself in quickly, heart pounding. Their house was immaculate as always, every surface gleaming, everything in its place. I headed straight for the master bathroom, where I knew Cassandra kept her extensive collection of beauty products. I opened her shower and located her expensive shampoo and conditioner. Carefully, I emptied half the shampoo bottle and replaced it with the blue hair dye, mixing it thoroughly. It would take a few washes to really show up, but by the time of her important presentation, her blonde highlights would have a distinct blue tint. Next, I found her makeup bag. I added the itching powder to her foundation and face powder, mixing it in carefully so it wasn't visible. The effect wouldn't be immediate, but about 30 minutes after application, her face would start to itch and turn red. Just in time for her presentation. I moved on to her closet. Locating the outfit she had posted about wearing for her big day, a white blouse and black pencil skirt. I carefully applied super glue to strategic areas of the seams, where it wouldn't be noticed until she was wearing the items. The blouse would split just enough to be embarrassing. The skirt would do the same. Before leaving, I used the prepaid phone to send messages to the email addresses I had gathered for her potential clients. "Just wanted to warn you about working with Cassandra Jenkins," I wrote. "Check out these reviews from her previous clients." I included links to fake review sites I had created, filled with complaints about missed deadlines and unprofessional behavior. Then I moved on to my parents' house. I knew they would be out. Tuesday was their weekly lunch with my father's law partners. Again, I used my key, the one they had given me for emergencies. In their bathroom, I replaced my mother's expensive face cream with a similar-looking product that I knew from my nursing experience would cause temporary redness and irritation. Nothing dangerous, just uncomfortable and unsightly. In my father's closet, I found the suit he had specially tailored for his retirement party. I applied super glue to strategic areas. The crotch seam, the buttonholes, the pocket linings. Again, nothing that would be noticed until it was too late. Using their computer, I logged into my father's email account. His password had always been my mother's birthday, something I had discovered years ago when he asked me to check his emails during a hospital stay. I sent messages to several of his colleagues, canceling one-on-one meetings he had scheduled before the retirement party, citing personal reasons. I made sure to make the tone slightly odd, enough that they might find it strange, but not suspicious enough to follow up immediately. Before leaving, I accessed Cassandra's social media accounts from my parents' computer. She used the same password for everything, her twin's birthday. I posted several embarrassing childhood photos of her that she had always hated, with captions about feeling nostalgic and embracing my true self. I scheduled them to post gradually over the next few days, so it wouldn't seem like an obvious hack. As I worked, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me was horrified at what I was doing, recognizing that this level of calculated revenge wasn't like me at all. But another part felt a fierce satisfaction. For once, they would experience consequences. For once, they wouldn't be able to laugh off their cruelty as just a joke. I carefully covered my tracks, wiping down surfaces I had touched, making sure everything looked undisturbed. Then I left both houses exactly as I had found them, locked the doors behind me, and drove to pick up Zoe from school. That evening, as I helped Zoe with her homework and prepared dinner, I felt a curious calm. What was done. Now, I just had to wait. The next morning, I went about my routine as usual, dropping Zoe at school and heading to work. I kept my phone close, anticipating the fallout. It came sooner than I expected, during my lunch break. My phone rang, displaying my mother's number. I stepped into an empty break room to answer. "Catherine? We have a situation," my mother said without preamble. Her voice was tight with stress. "It's Cassandra. Something's wrong with her hair." I feigned concern. "What do you mean?" "It's turning blue." "Blue, Catherine. She washed it this morning and noticed a slight tint, but now it's getting worse. She has that big presentation tomorrow." "What is she going to do?" I suppressed a smile. "That's strange. Maybe she used a new shampoo that reacted with her hair color?" "She's used the same products for years," my mother snapped. "This makes no sense." "She's hysterical." "That's terrible," I said, making sure to sound appropriately sympathetic. "Can't she just wash it again?" "She's tried. It's getting worse with each wash. She's called her hairdresser for an emergency appointment, but who knows if they can fix it in time." "Well, it's just hair," I said, echoing Cassandra's words from the party. "It grows back, right?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "This isn't funny, Catherine. This is serious. This could affect her career." I said. "Kind of like how cutting a 6-year-old's hair without permission could affect her emotional well-being." Another pause, longer this time. "Are you implying something?" "Not at all, Mom. I'm just putting things in perspective. Anyway, I have to get back to work. Patients to care for. Real problems, you know? Hope Cassandra figures something out." I hung up before she could respond, a small thrill of satisfaction running through me. Phase 1 was unfolding perfectly. That evening, my phone rang again. This time, it was Cassandra herself. When I answered, her face appeared on video call, and I had to struggle not to laugh. Her hair was indeed turning a noticeable shade of blue, especially around her face and at the ends. "Catherine, you need to help me," she said, her voice frantic. "I've tried everything. Nothing is working. My presentation is tomorrow morning." "That's unfortunate," I said mildly. "Have you tried a color corrector?" "Of course I have," she snapped. "Nothing is working. And now my face is breaking out in this weird rash from the makeup I was testing for tomorrow. I look like a diseased Smith." Indeed, her face was blotchy and red, clearly irritated from the itching powder I had mixed into her products. I felt a twinge of guilt, quickly suppressed by the memory of Zoe's tears. "Maybe you should reschedule your presentation," I suggested innocently. "I can't reschedule. These clients are only in town for 2 days. This was my big chance." She was near tears now, a sight I had rarely seen. Cassandra, always composed, always perfect, was falling apart. "Did you have anything to do with this?" she suddenly demanded. "With what? Your hair? Your makeup? How would I have done that, Cassandra? I haven't been to your house in months." She stared at me suspiciously. "This started happening right after Dad's party. After the incident with Zoe." "You mean after you cut off my daughter's hair without permission and then laughed about it with Mom and Dad?" "That incident." Her face flushed, though it was hard to tell with the rash. "It was just a joke, Catherine. You're always so sensitive. And now your hair is blue. Hilarious, isn't it? Just a joke. Hair grows back, right? Isn't that what you said?" Understanding dawned in her eyes. "You did do this." "How? When?" I kept my expression neutral. "I have no idea what you're talking about. But it seems to me that you're experiencing some consequences for your actions. Funny how that works." "I'm going to tell Mom and Dad," she threatened, reverting to childhood tactics. "Go ahead," I said calmly. Tell them their golden child is having a bad hair day. I'm sure they'll be very concerned. More concerned than they were about their granddaughter's feelings, certainly. Cassandra's lower lip trembled. For a moment, she looked like the little sister I had once protected from playground bullies, the one I had taught to ride a bike, the one I had helped with homework. But then I remembered the smirk on her face as she stood with scissors in hand, the way she had laughed when Zoe cried. "You'll regret this," she said finally. "No," I replied. "I don't think I will. Good luck with your presentation." I ended the call, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes, but also sadness for what our relationship had become. Still, I reminded myself, she had brought this on herself. Actions have consequences, a lesson my family had never seemed to learn. The next morning, I received a text from my father. "Need to talk. Call me." Short and demanding, typical of him. I waited until my lunch break to return the call. "What's going on, Dad?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Something strange is happening," he said, his voice gruff with annoyance. "I found my retirement party suit this morning to take to the dry cleaners. And there's something wrong with it. The seams are coming apart in weird places. And now Evelyn's face is all red and puffy from some new cream she's using." "That's odd," I said. "Bad timing. With your party coming up." "Very bad timing," he agreed. And now this business with Cassandra's hair and her missing that big presentation because she looked like, in her words, a smith with a skin condition. It's like the family's cursed suddenly. Cursed? Or maybe just experiencing some karma, I suggested. There was a pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, Dad. Just an observation. Seems like everyone's having some image problems lately. Tough when appearances are so important to you all." Another pause, longer this time. "You had something to do with this, didn't you?" His voice had that dangerous quiet tone I remembered from childhood, the one that usually preceded punishment. "I'm not sure what you're implying," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But it does seem like the universe has a way of balancing things out sometimes." "Catherine and Jenkins," he said, using my full name as he did when I was in serious trouble as a child. "If I find out you've been tampering with our things, you'll what, Dad? Laugh at me? Make cruel comments about my appearance? About my child? Oh wait, you've already done that." He was silent for a moment. "This isn't like you, Catherine." "No? Well, laughing at a crying 6-year-old whose hair was cut off without her permission isn't like loving grandparents either. And yet here we are." I could almost hear him processing this, trying to formulate a response that would put him back in control of the situation. Finally, he spoke. "We may have been a bit insensitive about the hair situation." "A bit insensitive? That's what you're going with." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You called it a hair situation. My daughter was assaulted. Her bodily autonomy was violated. And you laughed. You made it worse with your cruel comments. And now you're upset because you're experiencing a fraction of the humiliation you inflicted on an innocent child." "That's quite an accusation," he said stiffly. "It's not an accusation, Dad. It's a fact. One you seem unwilling to acknowledge. Now I need to get back to my patients. People with real problems. Good luck with your suit situation." I hung up, hands shaking slightly but feeling stronger than I had in years. For once, I had stood up to him, named his behavior for what it was. And it felt good. That afternoon, I received a surprising call from Gregory, Cassandra's husband. He had always been polite but distant with me, clearly taking his cues from Cassandra regarding family dynamics. "Catherine," he said when I answered. "I think we need to talk." "About what, Gregory?" He sighed heavily. "About what's been happening. The hair, both Zoe's and now Cassandra's. The presentation disaster. All of it." "I'm listening," I said cautiously. "Look, I know what Cassandra did was wrong. I should have said something at the time, and I'm sorry I didn't. It was cruel and thoughtless." His admission surprised me. "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot." "And your parents' reaction," he continued. "It was completely inappropriate." I was shocked, to be honest. "Yet you said nothing," I pointed out. "I know. I should have. It's just, you know how your family dynamics work. I've always tried to stay out of it." He paused. But what's happening now, these coincidences? They're not coincidences, are they? I remained silent. I'm not going to ask you to confirm anything, he said quickly. I just want you to know that I understand why someone might want to balance the scales, so to speak. And I think Cassandra is starting to understand too. What do you mean? She's been upset, obviously. The presentation was a disaster. She had to cancel at the last minute. And those clients went with another designer. But last night, she said something interesting. She said, maybe I went too far with Zoe's hair. Maybe it wasn't just a joke. I was stunned. Cassandra, admitting she might have been wrong? It seemed impossible. I think, Gregory continued carefully, that there might be an opportunity here. For healing, for understanding. If everyone could just acknowledge their part in this mess. That would require my parents to admit they were wrong, I said skeptically. I've never seen that happen in 34 years. People can surprise you, he said. Especially when they're forced to see themselves clearly for the first time. He paused. Catherine, whatever happens next. I want you to know that I think Zoe is a wonderful child, and what happened to her was wrong. I've told the twins that as well. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, contemplating this unexpected development. Was it possible that my revenge had actually created an opening for real change? Or was this just another manipulation? Gregory playing good cop to lull me into a false sense of security? Time would tell. But for now, I felt a certain satisfaction knowing that my family was finally experiencing some consequences for their actions. Maybe, just maybe, it would lead to the kind of reflection and growth I had long given up hoping for. The next few days were quiet, almost eerily so. No calls from my parents, no messages from Cassandra. I focused on Zoe, who was gradually adjusting to her new haircut. Her teacher had been wonderful, using it as an opportunity to talk to the class about how people can look different but still be the same person inside. Some of the girls in her class had even asked their parents for similar short haircuts, thinking Zoe looked cool. It warmed my heart to see her beginning to smile again, to hold her head up. Then, exactly 1 week after my covert operations, I received a text from my mother. Family dinner this Saturday. Neutral location. Morton's Steakhouse, 7 p.m. We need to talk. I was immediately suspicious. A neutral location suggested they recognized there was a serious conflict to resolve, which was unprecedented in our family. Typically, my parents would simply expect everyone to show up at their house and pretend nothing had happened. I consulted with Alicia, who had become my sounding board throughout this ordeal. It could be a trap, she warned. They might be planning to confront you about their suspicions. Or, I suggested, they might actually want to apologize. Even saying it out loud seemed far-fetched. Only one way to find out, Alicia said. But whatever happens, remember you're in the right here. Your priority is protecting Zoe. I decided to attend, but arranged for Zoe to have a sleepover at Alicia's that night, just in case. I didn't want to subject her to any more family drama. Saturday evening arrived, and I entered Morton's Steakhouse with a mixture of dread and curiosity. My family was already seated at a round table in a quiet corner. Cassandra's hair was covered by a scarf, though I could see hints of fading blue at the edges. My mother's face still showed slight signs of irritation from the cream I had tampered with. My father looked as impeccable as always, though he shifted uncomfortably in his chair as if his clothing was bothering him. Catherine, my mother greeted me stiffly. Thank you for coming. I nodded, taking the remaining seat. Where are Gregory and the boys? I asked, noticing their absence. Gregory thought it best if just the four of us talked first, Cassandra said, not meeting my eyes. A waiter came to take our drink orders, and we sat in uncomfortable silence until he returned with them. Finally, my father cleared his throat. Catherine, we've asked you here because there have been some unusual occurrences lately. So I've heard, I said neutrally, taking a sip of my wine. Very unusual, my mother emphasized. Cassandra's hair turned blue right before her important presentation. My face cream suddenly caused a terrible reaction. Your father's custom suit fell apart at the seams. All right after. She trailed off. After you all laughed at my daughter when Cassandra cut off her hair without permission, I finished for her. They exchanged glances. My father leaned forward. We believe these events may not be coincidental. I met his gaze steadily. That's an interesting theory. Catherine, Cassandra said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Did you do something to my shampoo? To my makeup? I considered my answer carefully. Denying it outright would be easy, but it would also let them off the hook. Admitting it might open me up to their anger, even legal repercussions if they were vindictive enough. But it might also force a real conversation. What if I did? I asked finally. What if someone decided that people who hurt a child and laugh about it deserve to experience some consequences for once? My mother gasped. So you admit it. You sabotaged us all. I admit nothing specifically, I said calmly. I'm speaking hypothetically. But let's talk about what you're all willing to admit. Cassandra, do you admit cutting Zoe's hair without her permission, or mine was wrong? Mom, Dad, do you admit laughing at a crying child and making cruel comments about her appearance was wrong? They were silent, exchanging uncomfortable glances. Finally, to my surprise, Cassandra spoke. I shouldn't have cut her hair, she said quietly. It wasn't funny. It was mean. I was jealous. Jealous? Of a 6-year-old? I asked incredulously. She looked down at her hands. Of the attention she gets. Of how beautiful she is. Of your relationship with her. I don't have that with the twins. They prefer Gregory. Her voice broke slightly. I shouldn't have taken it out on Zoe. I'm sorry. I was stunned. In 31 years, I had never heard Cassandra offer a genuine apology for anything. My parents were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. My mother spoke next. We may have been insensitive in our reaction. She admitted reluctantly. Insensitive? I repeated. You said, and I quote, she's not a beauty queen anyway. About your own granddaughter. My mother had the grace to look ashamed. It was a thoughtless comment. I didn't mean it. And you, I turned to my father. You said, now she finally looks like your kid. Do you have any idea how hurtful that was? To both of us? My father cleared his throat. It was an inappropriate joke. I apologize. Their apologies were grudging, minimal, but they were apologies nonetheless. Something I had never thought I'd hear. If, my father continued, emphasizing the word, if someone did tamper with our personal items as some sort of revenge, that would be completely unacceptable. Possibly even criminal. I leaned forward. If someone did that, Dad, it would be because they had exhausted all other options for getting through to you. Because for years, decades even, they had their feelings dismissed, their boundaries violated, and were told they were too sensitive when they objected. If someone did that, it would be because watching their child subjected to the same treatment was the final straw. The table fell silent. For perhaps the first time, my family seemed to be actually hearing me. We haven't been fair to you, have we? My mother said finally, her voice small. No, I said simply. You haven't. And more importantly, you haven't been fair to Zoe. She deserves better from her family. Cassandra reached into her purse and pulled out a small gift bag. This is for Zoe. It's not much, but I thought maybe. She pushed it across the table to me. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a beautiful set of hair accessories, clips, headbands, and scrunchies in Zoe's favorite colors. For when her hair grows back, Cassandra explained. And for now too. I thought they might help her feel better about what I did. The gesture was small but significant. I felt a lump in my throat. Thank you. I'm sure she'll love them. How is she doing? My mother asked, genuine concern in her voice for the first time. She's adjusting, I said. Her teacher has been wonderful. Some of the kids at school actually think her short hair is cool now. But she still has moments where she gets upset, remembering what happened. My father nodded slowly. Children are resilient. But they shouldn't have to be resilient against their own family. The rest of the dinner proceeded with cautious conversation. We discussed boundaries moving forward. No more pranks on Zoe or anyone else. No more dismissing of feelings as too sensitive. No more enabling of hurtful behavior. As we were preparing to leave, I decided to offer my own olive branch. If someone did tamper with your personal items, I said carefully, I think that person would probably acknowledge that wasn't the most mature way to handle the situation. But sometimes, when people feel powerless, they resort to desperate measures to protect those they love. My father nodded slowly. Understandable. Not excusable, perhaps, but understandable. Moving forward, I continued. I think we all need to remember that actions have consequences, and that family should protect each other, not hurt each other. They all nodded in agreement. As we parted ways in the parking lot, Cassandra pulled me aside. I really am sorry, Catherine. About Zoe's hair and about everything. All these years of competing, of trying to make you look bad so I could look better. It's exhausting, and it's cost me my relationship with my sister. Her words touched something in me, a spark of hope that perhaps real change was possible. It's not too late to fix that, I said softly. If you're really willing to try. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I am. I miss my big sister. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the unexpected turn of events. My revenge had been petty, perhaps even childish. But it had accomplished something years of conversations and appeals had failed to do. It had made my family see me, hear me, and acknowledge their behavior. It had forced them to experience consequences and reflection. Was it the most mature approach? No. Would I do it again? Maybe not. But in this case, it had been the catalyst for what might be genuine change. And for that, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Over the next few weeks, our family began the slow, awkward process of rebuilding relationships on healthier terms. It wasn't easy. Years of established patterns don't change overnight. There were missteps and moments of tension. But there was also a new willingness to acknowledge wrong, to apologize, and to do better. Cassandra made a particular effort with Zoe. She came over one afternoon with art supplies, knowing how much Zoe loved to draw, and spent hours creating with her. She listened patiently to Zoe's stories and asked thoughtful questions. At the end of the visit, she knelt down to Zoe's level and offered a heartfelt apology for cutting her hair. Zoe, with the simple forgiveness of childhood, hugged her aunt and declared, "It's okay. I like my hair short now. It's easier to wash." My parents took longer to fully come around. My father, never comfortable with emotional vulnerability, showed his remorse through actions rather than words. He started a college fund for Zoe and actually remembered her preferences when bringing her gifts, rather than the generic dolls he used to buy that she had no interest in. My mother made an effort to connect with me one-on-one, something she had rarely done throughout my life. During one of these coffee dates, she made a confession that shocked me. "I've always been harder on you than on Cassandra," she admitted, "because you reminded me so much of myself at your age. Responsible, practical, always trying to do the right thing. I saw my own unfulfilled dreams in you, and somehow that made me push you away instead of drawing you closer. It wasn't fair, and I'm sorry." These words, simple as they were, healed something in me I hadn't even realized was still wounded. The acknowledgement that the disparity in treatment had been real, not imagined, validated decades of hurt feelings. We all agreed to try family therapy, which was as uncomfortable as you might imagine for a family that had spent decades sweeping problems under the rug. Our therapist, Dr. Landon, had his work cut out for him. But slowly, session by session, we began to develop healthier communication patterns and boundaries. One particularly breakthrough moment came when Cassandra admitted that her pranks and competitiveness stemmed from deep insecurity and a feeling that I was the favorite child, despite evidence to the contrary. "You always seemed so perfect," she told me during a therapy session. "Good grades, responsible, everyone's favorite babysitter." I felt like I could never measure up, so I stopped trying and went the opposite direction. "But they always took your side," I objected, gesturing to our parents. "They always excused your behavior and told me to be the bigger person. Because they expected more from you," my father interjected. "We held you to a higher standard because we knew you could meet it." With Cassandra, we had lower expectations, which wasn't fair to either of you. These revelations didn't instantly repair decades of hurt, but they helped us understand each other better. Meanwhile, Zoe continued to adapt to her new haircut with remarkable resilience. Her hair was growing out nicely, and she had embraced the pixie style, even asking for some colorful temporary streaks, which I happily provided. Her confidence returned, bolstered by her teacher's support and her classmates' positive reactions. 1 month after our dinner at Morton's, we had our first new normal family gathering at my parents' house. It was still awkward at times, with moments of old patterns threatening to resurface. But there was also laughter, genuine laughter. Not at anyone's expense, but from sharing stories and enjoying each other's company. As I watched Zoe playing a board game with her cousins, her face lit up with happiness. I felt Gregory sit down beside me on the couch. "I'm glad you did it," he said quietly, so only I could hear. "Did what?" I asked, though I knew what he meant. He smiled. Whatever it was that finally made them see. Sometimes people need a strong wake-up call before they can change. I nodded, neither confirming nor denying. "The important thing is that we're moving in a better direction now." "Agreed," he said. "And for what it's worth, I think you're an amazing mother. Zoe is lucky to have you." That evening, as I was brushing Zoe's growing hair before bed, she asked me a question that made me pause. "Mommy, why did everyone start being nicer after my hair got cut?" I considered how to answer this complex question in terms a 6-year-old could understand. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "people don't realize they're being unkind until something big happens that makes them stop and think about their behavior. What happened with your hair made everyone in our family rethink how they treat each other." She nodded thoughtfully. "Like when Ms. Peterson makes us sit in the thinking chair at school when we're not being nice." I smiled. "Something like that, yes. Everyone in our family had to take a turn in the thinking chair." "Even you?" she asked, always perceptive. "Even me," I admitted. "I learned that sometimes when you're trying to protect someone you love, you might do things that aren't exactly right. The important thing is to learn from mistakes and try to do better." She seemed satisfied with this answer. As I tucked her in, she wrapped her arms around my neck. "I'm glad everyone's being nicer now. And I'm glad you're my mommy." "I'm glad you're my daughter," I whispered back, my heart full. The journey wasn't over, of course. Real change takes time and consistent effort. There would still be moments when old patterns emerged, when hurtful words were spoken before thought. But now, at least, there was accountability. There was acknowledgement of wrong and genuine attempts to do better. I learned some important lessons through this experience. I learned that sometimes standing up for yourself and those you love requires bold action. I learned that people can change when they're forced to see the consequences of their behavior. I learned that family relationships are worth fighting for, but only if everyone is willing to put in the work. Most importantly, I learned that protecting my daughter doesn't mean shielding her from all hurt, but rather showing her that she deserves respect and teaching her to stand up for herself when others cross her boundaries. As for my revenge, was it the most mature response? Probably not. But sometimes, when words fail and patterns seem unbreakable, actions speak louder. Sometimes, a little chaos is necessary to create space for real change. Family is complicated. The people who should love us the most can sometimes hurt us the deepest. But with honesty, boundaries, and a willingness to grow, even the most damaged relationships can begin to heal. What about you? Have you ever had to take drastic measures to protect someone you love or to break unhealthy family patterns? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for yourself and your children, even against family. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, protecting those we love is always worth it, even when it's difficult.